What's up? I'm Broken as Fun. There's a couple things I wanted to talk about that I feel majority of the players who played this game feel is pretty important. It's a little bit controversial, and I really hope we get some good input out of it. So without further ado, let's get this started. I really appreciate you guys watching this video, and thank you very much for all your support. If you're new, please subscribe and like if you want to see more future content. Really appreciate it, guys, and I'll see you in the video. Okay, so first things first, let's talk about what meta is and why it's so important to us. Okay, so first of all, there are two different definitions, and you can find these on urbandictionary.com. They're accessible to everybody, but there's two different definitions for meta. Now, one of them doesn't apply to us, so I'm not even going to get into that one. But the meta we're talking about is this one. The most effective tactic available, usually used in MOBAs like League of Legends and Dota 2, to describe what's currently the most effective means of winning and being successful in the game at that point. It's commonly referred to as meta. And then you see there's an example there. Dude, I swear Ribbon support is going to be meta soon. I can feel it. And we're going to get into that example later with a little example of my own. So what does that mean for us as Smite players? What's the most effective way? And who figures that out? Who creates the meta? And when does the meta change? But more importantly, the question we want to ask ourselves today, the thing that I think is most important for the majority of players on any skill level in any game mode should know is, how do I change the meta? How do I make this game tilt in our favor by being unpredictable in my pick, but still being what I consider to be meta? Now, it's not the traditional sense of the term, but this is how I think meta should be, and I think it would work out a lot better for the majority of us if we started looking at meta in this particular faction instead of the good old, well, here's what the pros are doing, now it's set in stone, I have to play this way. Because I try and veer away from that kind of playstyle and that kind of mentality, because I truly believe it's down to us individual players in each individual game to make the correct decision. And sometimes the correct decision isn't what the pros are playing in the SPL right now, because the team we're against is not playing in the SPL right now. So that's kind of where I'm coming from with what I'm about to say. So this applies mostly to, we would say, ranked individuals and the more competitive side of casual conquest, and that would be, you know, you're picking your picks and bans, and the gods you play are largely based around what the pros are playing, and a lot of people consider that to be the meta. Whatever the pros are doing is meta, and that's just not the case. That is not the case at all. And before you trace my IP address and come burn down my house, I'd like to explain why that isn't the case. So I'd like to preface by saying professional players play on the professional level because they have a really solid understanding of what meta actually is. And that's the whole reason they're there. So that's why we see a lot of their picks and bans as a set-in-stone kind of meta. But that isn't the case. As you've seen with a lot of professional gameplay, you see what people would consider off-meta picks or outside of the meta picks, and they come in and they win a game, you know, just detrimentally. You've seen Athena jungle in the SPL before, and that's, before that happened, was considered outside of the meta. But now, a lot of the time, since that's happened, you see people every once in a while running Athena in the jungle because they know it'll work now. Because they've seen it happen because a professional has done it. And that's what they're there for. They consistently make and break meta because they understand what true meta actually is. And from my standpoint, that would be just having the knowledge of every god's strengths and weaknesses and how that can contribute and take away from your team. And to me, that's what meta is, finding the most effective tactic available for that certain circumstance. That's meta. So as players, that's what we kind of need to do if we want to play within the meta. We have to figure out what works for our team right now. And that all starts in lobby chat. You know, good communication with your team, whether you're in ranked or casual conquest, when you're on the competitive side of things, if you got a 5-man queued up, if you're solo queuing, no matter what, that is it. That is it. Being able to proficiently play a god that fits into your team's composition. That's it. Knowing what works and what isn't going to work. It's pretty simple. It's not set in stone. It's not copy and paste. That's not how Smite was meant to be played. It's not an easy game. It's a strategy game. And that's where a big part of the strategy comes from. Your picks and bans and what works and what isn't going to work all kind of falls down to us as individual players in each individual game, just like it does with the pros. And when the pros pick outside what is the traditional quote-unquote meta and still win games, people rant and rave and they think it's awesome and everybody celebrates like, wow, we never saw that before. But that's because they really understand what meta truly is. It's the most effective tactic available. And it doesn't mean that's set in stone. It's just available at the time. That's meta. To me, that is meta. Word for word. Now let's get into items, because this is where things get a little more tricky. So I'd like to start this by saying I do believe that there are core items for Smite. There are items that you just absolutely need. And I believe that core items fall into 2 different categories. So the first category would be class-based. For example, I think that 95% of all junglers need Boomba's Mask currently. With the way all the starter items work out, you just need Boomba's Mask as a jungler. It heals you, you don't lose any golden or experience, and when you're doing camps together with people, you're not splitting that experience, and it keeps you from falling off early game. That's its whole purpose. So to me, that is a core item. You need that, and that's just in this certain category here, and we'll call it category A. Now category B for core items is completely different. Now this is where things get tricky, because there are core items for every individual god. For example, we'll go with somebody easy. Anubis, for example. Anubis, his passive procs with lifesteal items. So you want to proc more damage with lifesteal. So you're going to want more lifesteal items. So I guess core items for Anubis would be anything kind of lifesteal. A Bancroft Talon, a Pythagorean's Piece, things like that. That's a core item for Anubis. That's the category B for core items. Now that's about as far as I'm going to get into as core items. This isn't a guide for builds. It's more like a how to build once you have a knowledge of every individual item. Now that's where the meta side of things comes in. Once you have a fair amount, I would say, of knowledge about each individual item, you can now get into the process of building and counter building your gods as you play your games. Then that's all based around your team's comp and their team's comp as far as players and gods are concerned. And then it moves into what can you do on the battlefield and what can they do to you. This is how you're going to get your items. And you see this again from the pros. They're building a certain way. They've got a couple builds that you see in the SPL and their videos, and they come out with guides on how you should build this certain way with classes. And, builds are not meant to be copy and paste either. Now, I will say that if you're new to Smite, if you haven't really figured out what every single item does, I'd say, following builds as a guide is a good idea, but the quicker you can veer away from copying and pasting builds, the better you're going to see yourself playing. You're going to see better results at the end of the day, because you can start counter building and building against the team that you're fighting. Okay, and that is meta. Okay, that's completely within meta, is to build against your team and not just take somebody else's build, not take Weakened's jungle build or a build you found on Smite Guru or whatever, or wherever you get your builds from. They are guides, but that's not meta at all. That's not set in stone. Those are guides for people who don't know what they're doing. And I see a lot of people who are clenching onto those builds like it's meta. And it's not. It's not meta. Meta is you being able to find the most effective tactic available for the team you are fighting. That's meta, guys. That's it. It's not anything else other than that. It's not what the pros are playing right now. It's not what they're building. Although they have great builds and they have great plays, and watching their team fights is super freaking cool. But that's the point. They're pros. It's fun to watch people who are professionals at the game win the game and carry the game and do awesome things with the game. It's great. But it doesn't mean that exactly what they are doing is going to work for you, because you're not them. You don't have their same strengths and weaknesses as players. You're not as we're just blatantly not as proficient as them. And the only way we can get there is by learning everything about Smite like they did. We've got to learn what each god does and how this god can contribute to a team fight, and what this item can do for me and do for my team, or what does my team need me to do. That kind of mentality is what we need to be going into each and every single game with, because that is meta. I really appreciate you guys sitting here taking the time to listen to my opinion, and I really want to hear what everybody else has to say about this. I am hoping for a little bit of conversation down in the comments below. So if you liked the video, please like and subscribe for more future content, and I really appreciate you guys sticking around. Thanks, and I'll catch you in the next one.